Hello, and welcome to Let Me Tell You a Story podcast, produced by ED Media. Today's story is from the best-selling novel, Journey to the Kingdom of Soul, written by author Everlazt. Chapter 12. Moving through the camp with the ease of a shadow in the night, Lil Kay wore the hood to her dark blue poplin cloak, low over her eyes. After a night of good food and drink, the traveling community had wind down to a few staggering drunks wandering around the sleeping camp. Smoke billowed into the night sky from the dying fires, with a lot of the soldiers and servants wrapped up in blankets stretched out under the cover of the large trees. Lil Kay maneuvered through the strong presence of body odor and stale wine. Making it halfway through the camp without being stopped and questioned by anybody, she finally got a feel of how the camp was set up. "Hey little lady, why don't you come on over here and have a drink with me?" A slurring voice said from within the shadows, not too far from where Lil Kay stopped in her tracks. She tried to adjust her eyes to the moonlight, fixing her vision on a hairy-faced white man. "No thank you," Lil Kay said, and tried to move on. "Come on honey, just one drink," he whined. "Maybe next time." "I have." Lil Kay stopped short, as the man quickly climbed up from his seat and grabbed her by the arm. "I'm trying to be nice, but I see you like it rough." Lil Kay was now able to see the man was wearing an Industriarmy uniform, and his breath reeked of wine. "Please don't hurt me," Lil Kay pleaded in a timid tone. Feeling a minor power surge from his quick dominance over the smaller woman, the army soldier pulled on her arm and said, "So come drink with me." Okay, she backed down, not wanting to cause a scene and wake anyone else in the area. Lil Kay let the soldier pull her into the shadows and they sat down on some blankets. Lil Kay's eyes were everywhere, trying to quickly gather herself, as he shoved a bottle of wine into her hand, and began to fondle her chest. "Aw, they're so soft." Lil Kay swallowed hard, then smoothly slipped her hand from underneath her cloak. The soldier never saw the dagger flash before his eyes as Lil Kay jabbed it into his throat. His scream froze in midair as he grabbed her hand that held the knife. Lil Kay jumped away from him and watched as he unsuccessfully tried to pull the dagger out of his throat. The soldier gagged and gasped, then fell silent. Lil Kay looked around to make sure no one witnessed the man's last fighting moments. All was quiet. Lil Kay reached down and freed her dagger from his throat. She wiped the blade clean on his trousers, then quickly moved on before someone suddenly woke up and tried to stop her escape. Lil Kay thought about a good way to keep a low profile and infiltrate the large camp without being targeted by another Industriarmy soldier. She knew sleeping out in the open, like most of the camp, was not the safest way to rest around these savages, and her best bet was one of the parked wagons. But which one? There were so many. Not knowing who was in any of them compounded the problem. She suddenly stopped walking and stepped off to the side when she spotted what looked like a camp patrol. Absorbing the darkness around her, Lil Kay knew the only way to know who was in the wagons was to pick one, and waltz right in. Choosing the closest one to her left, Lil Kay sniffed the air around the wagon to get a feel of what was inside. Then she took a deep breath and disappeared behind the canvas. A candle burned in the far corner, giving off a shadowy light in the cabin. A sleeping figure snored lightly, bundled up on top of a hay comforter. Lil Kay contemplated her introductory move, as she sat down on the floor Indian style. She put her face in her hands, then began a low audible whimper that slowly turned into light crying. The sleeping figure stirred and quickly sat up. He rubbed his eyes, then stared at the crying woman, not sure of what to do. "Are you okay?" the young boy asked in a low tone. Lil Kay pretended to be startled. "Oh. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you." She was surprised to be face to face with a cocoa-complexioned adolescent, with a scruffy 5-inch thick afro. He was sleeping in a pair of high-water moleskins and an old cotton shirt. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I have no place else to go," Lil Kay said in a low tone. "But they don't like for people to be around me." "So is it okay? Did they say you can stay with me?" he asked, looking for the company. Lil Kay stared into his brown eyes, and it quickly became clear to her that this was something he really wanted. "No, they didn't, but they mustn't know that I am here either." "Why not? Are you running away?" he asked in a conspiratorial whisper. "Yes, but you mustn't tell anyone," Lil Kay said with a frightened look in her eyes. "I won't. I promise," he said, moving in closer to her. But do you think you can take me with you? She stared at him and asked, "What is your name?" "Corey." "Where is your mom and papa, Corey?" Corey looked down at his hands. "They died in the war." Lil Kay wiped her face, pulled off her hood, then moved in closer to Corey. "I'm sorry to hear that, but why won't they let you be with the other children in the camp?" "Because of my ability to put words together and help people see the light within the darkness. Sometimes I wish I didn't have no stupid powers," Corey spat. "Why? If your words are really that special, then you should them as your strength," she said. "If your words can energize the people, then they can also help you in your time of need." Corey was quiet for a moment, as he continued to stare at his hands. He looked at her and asked, "What is your name?" "I am Lil Kay." "That's a nice name. But you still didn't say if you were going to take me with you," Corey said with the seriousness of an adult. "Yes, Corey, I will take you with me." His face lit up as he suddenly embraced her. "Thank you, Lil Kay, and I promise I won't slow you down." She chuckled, "Okay. Now tell me what you know about the camp." Chapter break. The early risers within the camp began to appear once dawn broke. A few people lit up new fires, as others made the morning trek down to the creek for fresh water. Once the young, that were allowed to make the journey, woke, then the rest of the camp seemed to come to life. The morning patrols were out and about, making sure order was maintained within the camp. The small groups of 2- and 3-man details roamed through the sections, making sure all was normal at the wake of a new day. "Hey, what's that?" one of the patrolling guards asked his partner. "Looks like one of ours got drunk and passed out." To come across a drunken soldier in the early morning was nothing new to the patrols. The closer they got to the sleeping figure, the more they began to realize the lying figure was not sleeping off a wild night out. The man's eyes were frozen open with his mouth locked into a scream that never came out. "Do you know him?" "Not by name, but I've seen him on the battlefield," the patrol told his partner. They bent down to examine the cold body and the condition it was in. To find a dead body or two around the settlement was nothing to sound any alarms over. The oppressed environment bred a hazardous atmosphere filled with heavy drinking, fights, rapes, and even murders. The patrolling guards were used to finding heinous scenes in the morning, especially ones involving women. Once they finished inspecting the body, the 2 patrolmen rolled the body up in the blanket it was resting on, and carried it over to the gravedigger wagon. Chapter 13. Papa Big and Lady Light sent for Zahara to join them for a private breakfast. Zahara draped herself in a red and orange full-length gown, and wrapped her hair with a matching scarf. The thought of her having to leave soon lingered heavily in the back of Zahara's mind. A reality she was not ready to embrace just yet. Especially since she was beginning to get used to being dressed up in elegant gowns, and being treated like royalty again. The brook possessed a spiritual culture that was very welcoming and easy to fall in love with if they were able to stay. Zahara was escorted by Santoya and an armed guard to a smaller dining room in the principal wing of the castle, where the royal family and their most trusted aides lived. The room held a more intimate feel to it than the bigger dining room they had eaten in. Paintings of different landscapes with bears and people mingling in them lined the walls of the room. After close examination, Zahara was convinced the figures in the pictures were family members of the royal couple. A large 15-seat table took up most of the room from its center. It was decorated with 2 bouquets of fresh flowers, and 2 bowls of fruit rested on top of a red tablecloth. It wasn't hard to tell who the big chair at the head of the table belonged to. The hard part was trying to figure out where was the proper place for her to sit. Not wanting to be out of place, Zahara remained standing, and admired the artwork on the walls. Suddenly the side doors popped open and Papa Big strolled into the room wearing his grisly grin. "Good morning, Zahara, thank you for joining us." "You know I'm not going to turn down a breakfast with you and Lady Light," Zahara said, as she hugged him. "Where is she anyway?" "She will be down in a moment," he said, pulling out the chair for her on the left side of his big chair. "The little one was real fussy this morning, so it's taking her a little longer than usual." Zahara chuckled, "Oh really? He is so adorable. He doesn't look like the troublemaker you're making him out to be." Papa Big let out a hearty laugh as he sat down at the head of the table. "Don't worry, you'll get to see him in action. That's when I want to see if you still have that easygoing attitude with him." One of the housewives entered the room carrying a tray with some freshly squeezed orange juice, and a plate of sweet-smelling almond nut rolls. Lady Light entered the room 2 seconds later with their energetic son jumping up and down in her arms. She looked beautiful as usual in a light blue gown, lined with gold trim, and her hair was draped down her shoulders in a curly style. "I'm sorry it took me so long, but this one wanted everything done his way this morning," Lady Light explained with a smile. Zahara chuckled, "Well, here, let me hold him, so you can take a break." "You don't have to ask me twice," Lady Light said as she shuffled over to the other side of the table, and handed him over. Chris looked as happy to see Zahara, as she was to be holding him. Lady Light took her seat on the other side of the table, and they enjoyed their almond nut rolls and fruit, while little Chris sucked on a piece of orange, getting most of the juices on Zahara and himself. Zahara couldn't believe how cute he looked making a mess on them. "So Zahara, we asked you to join us for breakfast this morning, because it's almost time for you to continue on your journey," Papa Big said. "And we wanted to spend a little time with you before you departed," Lady Light said, picking up where her husband left off at. "I want to thank you too for showing me and my people so much love." Zahara said, "I would have never imagined receiving a welcome with such solidarity, after what we went through. Thank you so much. That's the life of our land. We take pleasure in showing our friends up with a soulful reception," Papa Big boasted in his deep baritone. "Just like, I'm sure you and your people would have done for us." Zahara smiled, "I hope in the future I will be able to return the gesture." Zahara got quiet, and Lady Light could sense what was running through the young queen's mind. "Don't worry, Zahara, you will rebuild your homeland one day. You have a genuine love that the people will always come to. That will take you a long way in your time of rule." "Thank you, Lady Light, that means a lot to me," Zahara said, as she quickly weaved Chris's attempt to put his soiled hand on her face. "Zahara, I see our son really likes you. That puts our decision at a comforting level," Papa said. Zahara shot the couple a questioning glare. "What decision?" Lady Light looked over to Papa Big, then back at Zahara. "We would like for you to take our son with you to the Kingdom of Soul." Zahara was speechless. "We know this is a lot to ask for," Papa Big said, slightly bowing his head. "But we didn't know who we could turn to on such notice." "We hope we're not out of order for asking you this," Lady Light said, her voice full of worry to Zahara's slow reaction. "Oh no. I mean, no, I would be delighted and honored to fulfill your request," Zahara said with a big smile brightening up her face. "But are you sure? I mean, I'm pretty sure there are plenty of people here that are closer to you than I am." "You may be right, but there isn't one person from the brook who will feel comfortable leaving us at this time. Even if it's at our request," Papa Big said. "And we love that about our people. This is an important time in our existence, and everyone has to be a part of it," Lady Light said. "No one from here will leave, and I'm not leaving my husband. But I trust you are the one that can take our son to safety and care for him like I would in my absence." "I don't know what to say," Zahara exclaimed with a bright grin. "Say yes," Lady Light said, ready to cry and laugh at the same time. "Of course I will take him with me." Lady Light stood up and went over to the other side of the table. "Thank you, Zahara. I knew from the moment I laid eyes on you the gods of song had sent you our way for a reason." She kissed Zahara on her forehead and took her son out of the queen's hands. "Let me get Mr. Messy here cleaned up. Preparations are being made for your trip. But I would like for you to visit PD the wizard before you leave," Papa Big said as he rose from his seat. "Okay, but why?" Zahara asked. "Because our son has an inner voice that is still being developed as he grows, and PD has been studying it," Papa Big said, leading her out of the dining room. "And he will be able to explain it to you better than we can. I can feel it. Every time I hold him, it's a vibe I get from him. Just like we felt that special vibe when we met you," Papa Big said, as he led her down the hall so she could go change and go meet with the wizard. Chapter break. Zahara changed into a dark blue gown and let her hair down, before she was escorted down to PD the wizard's lair. Her personal guard remained out in the hallway, while Zahara was down the stairs with the wizard. "I'm so glad you could come visit me, before you left for your journey," PD said as he moved with ease around his large, but crowded dwelling. "Why? Did you find out something about the heart of Pakasound?" Zahara asked. "Not a lot, but enough," he said, moving from his table of bubbling potions to his big book. PD's place looked more active today than it did the last time she was down here. There were 3 rows of swords that had a sparkling powder substance on them, and at least 4 stacks of body armor that looked unusually shiny. PD, what's in these jars? Sahara asked as she eyed 3 trays of jars no bigger than an apple. PD looked up from his book. Hey, don't touch that. Sahara giggled. Okay, but what is it? That is one of my special crowd controls. Now come over here, so we can get started, please. PD looked so cute to Sahara, with his thick spectacles and short afro. Making the rest of his colorful outfit of brown trousers, with an yellow and green shirt a desperate cry for a makeover. Sahara could see why Lady Light loved to spend time with the wizard. He was extremely light-hearted, and his snappy style mirrored one from a funny uncle you visit when you need your spirits lifted. Now, according to the words, the heart of Packasound is at least 10,000 years old, and it was made by one of our very spiritual ancestors named Acorn. Have you ever heard of him? PD asked, looking over the rim of his spectacles. She thought for a moment. No. Not that I can remember. Well, he wrote a lot of our spoken words from the spirit world, because he understood the language better than the other ancestors of the times. The book says, he made a few power gems with the scriptures, and after the Great War, some of the pieces were stolen or misplaced. PD said, flipping through the pages. So what happened to Acorn? Sahara asked, clearly intrigued by the wizard's tale. Well, as we all know, the great city was destroyed and a lot of the survivors established new civilizations all over Musina. Some of these nations adapted their own cultures and traditions, and most are still going, till this day. But apparently Acorn disappeared in the midst of that large exodus. What does the heart do? Sahara asked, trying to read over his shoulder. Well, it says it has a very deep history of opening up doors to very spiritual dimensions that only the chosen can touch. What does that mean? It means anyone can possess the heart, but if you're not spiritually rooted to open the heart, will be unresponsive to you, making it useless to its possessor, PD explained. But, if you are one of the special walkers of Musina, chosen by the gods of song at birth, then you will be able to open up doors to a world that only a selective few can, PD said. How do you know if you were chosen by the gods of song with this birthright, to be a speaker of the word? Sahara asked. That is something the child's birth parents would know and hopefully develop with the child when they're old enough to understand. From that moment, the most powerful parents spiritually will begin to teach the child everything from the basics of the spirit world to the more advanced dimensions of the heart, PD explained. Sahara thought for a moment, then said, my mom was the more spiritual one out of my parents. But she passed before I was able to know her, let alone have her tell me about myself. So do you think I can be one of the chosen ones the book speaks about? Yes, I believe so. He turned to face her. Sahara, I told you I felt a very strong energy from you when we first met. And the way the heart responds to your touch, and not anyone else's, is a clear sign you two have some type of spiritual connection between the heart and your spirit. But how do I? Really connect with it? Sahara asked. That was a task for your mom to show you. Because somewhere down the road she was taught about how to pass on your bloodline powers. I'm just the messenger of the word. PD said. So, I'll never be able to learn how I can connect with it. Or even if I'm supposed to be in possession of the heart in the first place, Sahara said, with defeat in her voice. Of course you will. Lady Light said. Sahara's eyes rose. How? At the Kingdom of Soul, PD said with a smile. Your father knew you would be taught by the powers within the Jam Tower, and of course Queen Mary Jane herself. That is why I believe he sent you on this journey. No. He sent us because our land was being invaded by the Industriarmy. This is true. But I believe your father has always had this journey planned for you. This is a part of your life he couldn't raise you in, and the only place you can get clarity in it is at the Kingdom of Soul, PD explained as best he could. It just so happens to be the time in your life when you're being sent away. And I'm sure he didn't want to run the risk of you being captured or killed in the battle. So the best answer was to send you off on what's turning out to be your studies. Sahara slowly nodded her head, then asked, so what about little Chris? Is he chosen too? Yes. He is a very special child, with very special powers, PD said. He has a very exceptional mixture of bloodlines within him from his Papa Big and Lady Light. Lady Light has 2 strong powers from the spirit world she can use as a gift of love, or a tool for war. Not counting the other abilities she has within her, which she hasn't learned how to control yet. And I don't have to tell you about how special Papa Big is, he said with a ton of admiration for his 2 leaders. So when the little one gets bigger, what do you think is going to happen with his inner spirit? Sahara asked. If I'm right about this, Little Big's defense mechanism will be one of 2 things. Either he will transform into a bear like his dad, or some other kind of animal, or he will grow into a very destructive light of fire like his mom, PD said. But I won't be able to explain his powers to him. Shoot, I can't even explain my own powers, Sahara said with some distaste. That's why we felt it'll be a good idea if he goes with you to the Kingdom of Soul. You both can grow there. And the Jam Tower will be able to supply you both with any answers you shall seek as you both get older. This is the place where all of the spiritual leaders of Musina matured into their spiritual selves, he said, grinning from ear to ear. Sahara returned the smile. Thank you, PD, for helping me. Now I want to get to the Kingdom of Soul more than ever. I know you do, my queen. And for the rest of your journey I want you to take this, he said, handing her a red, black, and green scarf. Wow, this is beautiful, Sahara said, handling the silk garment as if it was going to break under her touch. This will shield you and the little one whenever you need that extra support, he said with a twinkle in his eye. Make sure you wear it at all times, until you get within the safety of the kingdom's walls. I will. Thank you. And PD. Yes, my dear? Everyone knows you're the true chosen one, Sahara said. PD laughed and led her back up the stairs. Flattery will get you nowhere in my shop. He gave her a hug and said, now have a safe trip, and remember the gods of song are always watching over you. Sahara nodded, then stepped into the main hallway. She was met by Santoya, who was standing next to Sahara's personal guard. When PD closed the door behind her, Sahara was left wondering if this was the last time she would ever see the great wizard again. Sahara, are you okay? You look like a taste of sadness has come over you once you stepped in the hallway, Santoya asked as they walked toward the guest wing of the castle. Sahara looked over to her and said, only time will tell if that flash of sadness will be a lasting impression, or just a moment of reflection.
Hey everyone, it's author Everlazt. I want to thank you for listening to Let Me Tell You a Story podcast. Tune in for the next episode. God bless and be safe.